This is TWiT.
You know, there's been a lot of negative about social media, and we've been talking a lot about it on our shows. And is it good? Is it bad? It's a source of disinformation. Can it bring people together? There's some positives, some negatives. I thought this was really interesting. I don't know if you watched the January 6th testimony, the congressional testimony, but there was a retired Republican judge, Michael Luttig, who was, I thought, really interesting. I remember very well his testimony, and I also remember thinking, well, he's sort of speaking slowly. I wonder if he's recovering from a stroke or something like that. He's not, but Joe Hagan, who's a writer for Vanity Fair, in a Twitter thread said, "I like how this guy treats every line of his testimony like he's engraving it on a national monument." And frankly,
he's
he really
talking to the stenographer, not to the public.
He really is engraving it for history, and he seems to know it. To which Judge Luttig responded on Twitter with a Twitter thread. "Thank you so much, Mr. Hagan. You almost presciently understood precisely what I was at least attempting to do to the best of my abilities during the hearing Thursday." He even mocked his own speech pattern. He says, "What you could not know and did not know, but I will tell you now, is that I believed I had an obligation to the Select Committee and the country first to formulate, ... then to measure, ... and then, ... to meter out every single word that I spoke carefully, exactingly, and deliberately, so that the words I spoke were pristine, clear, and would be heard and therefore understood as such." He said, "I believed Thursday I had a high responsibility and obligation to myself, even if to no other." And please bear in mind, it was the first time in 68 years that I'd ever been on national television. I wasn't scared. I wanted to do my best and not embarrass myself. But then I thought the most interesting thing was that I decided to respond to your tweet because I've been watching the tweets all day suggesting that I'm recovering from a severe stroke.
Oh, no.
And my friends, out of their concern for me and my family, have been earnestly forwarding me these tweets, asking me if I'm all right. This is the thing I wanted to bring up, and it's germane to this program. Such is social media, I understand, but I profoundly believe in social media's foundational, in fact, revolutionary value and contribution to free speech in our country. This is a 68-year-old, pretty conservative, right-wing Republican judge who one would expect would say, "Oh, social media." No, he says, "For that reason, I'm willing to willingly accept the occasional bad that comes from social media in return for the much more frequent good that comes from it, at least from the vastly more responsible, respectful speech on those media."
And I totally agree with that.
Isn't that
I
awesome?
think he's absolutely
That's
right.
amazing.
And I think it's great that somebody who's 68 and conservative is honest enough and perceptive enough to come to that conclusion, because I think that's absolutely true. And it would be more true for a lot more people if more people would learn to block and report.
Yeah, true. He says one more.
excuse
Let me
me.
just finish his tweet
Okay.
storm. One more thing, and then Glenn. "This is why 16 years after my retirement from the bench," he tweets, "even then, as a very skeptical, curmudgeonly old federal judge, I created a Facebook account and then a Twitter account." And again, he mocks himself slowly, very slowly. One account first, and then followed by the other. All of this said, I am not recovering from a stroke or any other malady, I promise. Thankfully, I've never been as sick or so debilitated as that ever in my life, and would not want that from anyone, knock on wood. So Judge Luttig is fine. He was intentionally speaking very carefully and precisely, and he appreciated the response on Twitter. Amazing. Go ahead, Glenn.
Yep.
Well, I have breaking news here from 1860. Live coverage in the social media of the day, which were newspapers, which were often put out in multiple editions a day.
I remember.
Coverage of Mr. Lincoln's speaking style. He's rather unsteady in his gait, and there is an involuntarily comical awkwardness which marks his movements while speaking. His voice, though sharp and powerful at times, has a frequent tendency to dwindle into a shrill and unpleasant sound. His enunciation is slow and emphatic, and a particular characteristic of his delivery was a remarkable mobility of his features, the frequent contortions of which excited the merriment which his words alone could not well have produced. So
very nice.
There you go.
1860.
Very slow speaker.
And occasionally high.
Very high pitched.
A little bit.
But it carried. His voice carried.
It carried.
Yep.
Daniel Day-Lewis nailed it.
Yes, he did, and I think
really
it was. I
did.
think it was partly based on that report.